All right. Hello, everyone. I am going to be reading chapter 3 in this video. And if you were in class Friday, we read chapter 3 together. But for those of you that were not, I'll be going through and stopping at some parts in this chapter to talk about hints that are relevant to our reading guide. On page 13 is where it starts. It's often safer to be in chains than to be free. It didn't take long for the government to realize that they couldn't guard the fence so heavily forever. Even with the fence and armed soldiers, people were still finding ways out. If things were bad in our city before, they would only get worse now. We all knew that. Some people made runs in the dark and literally tore their way to freedom. Others tried swimming the canals where the barbed wire couldn't reach. At least one family simply ducked low to avoid gunfire and crashed their car through the fence. Nobody asked who might try leaving next, but everybody wondered. I kept waiting for Mama to tell us we were leaving too. Surely she would, any day now. But she never did. Maybe she had been a prisoner here long before the fence appeared. So that's giving us some insights into the thoughts and feelings of her mother. And that would be under action also, because she is doing nothing. So that's some characterization. It's a hint into who she is as a character. Protests started in West Berlin. They chanted and held signs and aimed their cameras at the Gresners, who held up mirrors to reflect the sun into the camera lenses and ruin the pictures. Fritz, Mama, and I stood near the fence and looked everywhere among the protesters for Papa and Dominic, but we could never see them. Have they forgotten us already? I asked Fritz. He smiled as if I'd told a joke, then reached down and ruffled my hair. Papa would never forget us, Gerda. I kept staring, though every time I saw a face that almost was my father, my heart broke a little more. If he hasn't forgotten, then where is he? Fritz turned to Mama and lowered his voice so only the three of us could hear. There's talk about an apartment nearby that sits right on the border. You could enter the back of the building from the east and walk out of the front doors into the west. Go straight through the fence. Mama shook her head. The government won't tolerate that for long. I don't want to be there when they come. And they did. Only a few days later, the government bricked up all the lower exits of that building, thinking that would solve the problem. But then, people started jumping from the upper windows, hoping the crowd below on the west side would help catch them. Fritz was there a week later, watching from a distance, when a woman threw down a mattress and all her bedding from the third floor, while our police banged on her locked apartment door. When the police got inside, she finally leapt out, but the cushions weren't enough for the hard concrete below. The morning after, Fritz showed me the newspaper that described her as a deserter and someone with a weak mind who had believed the lies from the West. I barely breathed as I read the article, but managed to say, she died trying to get free. Why don't they care? Fritz pointed to the final paragraph, which warned the rest of us not to try the same thing. They care plenty, because they want everyone to know hers won't be the only death. His warm brown eyes met mine. Even children, Gerda. So that is an example of the propaganda, the newspapers spreading these stories and having control over the way that these stories are told. Now we're about to hear a couple other examples of propaganda, and I'm asking you to define that. You can use dictionary.com to define propaganda, but these other examples of propaganda are told through her school and through these clubs that she's forced to join. So remember, you were thinking about the way that information is told, the control of that. Soon afterward, the police bricked over the windows and locked up that building and every other building that stood along the border. Then they made the decision that something more permanent was needed. The fence began to be replaced with a concrete wall that was taller, thicker, and stronger. Sharp edges of broken glass were cemented in the top to prevent anyone from climbing over it, and watchtowers were built so fewer officers could guard larger areas. With one stacked block of concrete over another, our prison slowly became a fortress, and all we did was watch it happen. With each brick, my hopes faded until nothing was left. If there had ever been a chance of Dominic and my father returning, then the wall took that too. My school teacher taught us a new song that thanked our leaders for building a wall to keep the fascists out. I muted my glares and only mouthed the words when my teacher was looking. I couldn't bear to sing the lies. After a couple of months, the West sent tanks to watch their side of the border, so Russia sent tanks to our side of the border. The soldiers stared at one another through binoculars, each trying to guess which side would fire first. They all had fingers on their triggers. One side has to back down, or we'll have a third world war, Mama said over dinner one night. The tone in her voice sent shudders through me, but I still mumbled, if the West wins that war, Papa could come home. Fritz kicked me under the table, but it was too late. Mama looked up with eyes widened by dark memories. If the West wins again, then there'll be nothing to come back to, she said. Her eyes glazed over, and I knew she was remembering the things she had often described to us from the last war. The nightly bombings, constant hunger, and millions of deaths of both soldiers and civilians. Nobody wanted another war, not even if it brought the wall down. We will never be able to leave, Mama said. The sooner you both accept that, the happier you'll be. I nodded back at her, but I knew I could never again be happy here, and I refused to accept my life inside a prison. So a lot of characterization there for the mom. The things that she's saying, the things that she's remembering. It's kind of telling us some insights into what she has lived through. And the way she looks, too. And it says her eyes glazed over. So what do these things tell us about her as a character? And that should help you with the reading guide.